Before Princess Diana, no one in the royal family had a public image as bulletproof as the Queen Mother. She wasn't just liked, she was worshipped. A smiling little symbol of Britain itself, floating through crowds like a warm cup of tea. But here's the problem with symbols: symbols are edited, polished, protected. And when you peel back the Queen Mum branding, what you find isn't some harmless grandma. You find a woman who could be sweet in public and surgical in private. A woman with a taste for status, a talent for grudges, and an instinct for power that never really switched off. And the palace helped, because if the Queen Mother stayed lovable, the monarchy stayed lovable. So the question isn't, was she nice? The question is, how much ugliness can you hide behind a smile before it becomes the real story? Elizabeth Bowes Lyon was born into privilege, and she learned early that polite doesn't mean soft. She was the ninth of 10 children in a wealthy aristocratic family, raised in the kind of comfort where the rules of the world feel optional. And even as a girl, she had a reputation: charming, clever, and very particular about rank. There's a story from her childhood that says it all. She falls. Someone rushes to help her up and tries to comfort her with, "Are you okay, dear?" And little Elizabeth snaps back, "I'm not your dear, that is ma'am to you." Maybe it's exaggerated, maybe it's been retold for effect, but biographers keep circling the same point. She liked respect, she liked hierarchy, and she liked being treated as someone who mattered. That doesn't make her a villain, it makes her the exact kind of person who thrives in royal life. And the scary part, that edge never left. She just learned to wrap it in a smile. Then World War I hits, and suddenly her fairy tale upbringing gets a taste of blood and loss. Her family turns their home into a hospital for wounded soldiers. She plays the role perfectly: dutiful, composed, helpful. And it works. She learns a crucial lesson early: image is power. If you look brave, people believe you're brave. If you look warm, people forgive you for being cold. Years later, that skill becomes a superpower. Because when the royal family comes calling, they aren't looking for a woman who's kind. They're looking for a woman who can perform stability like a religion. And that's when Prince Albert, Bertie, starts chasing her. He's shy, awkward, a stammer. Not exactly the sweeping romance you'd sell to the public. So Elizabeth says no. Then she says no again. And what does Bertie do? He refuses to take the hint. He brings in his mother. He turns the whole thing into a royal campaign. That's not romance. That's pressure. And Elizabeth, the woman who feared losing her freedom, walked straight into the most controlled life on earth. Why? Because she didn't just marry a man, she married a possession. When she finally accepts, the public sees a love story. But inside the palace, it's something else: a woman being absorbed into the machine. On their wedding day in 1923, she makes a gesture that melts Britain. She places a bouquet at the tomb of the unknown warrior, honoring the war dead and her own family loss. It's powerful, it's cinematic, it's perfect, and the palace understands immediately. This woman has instinct. She can touch the public's emotions without saying a word. She can become a national mood. So Elizabeth becomes Duchess of York, smiling, quiet, utterly oyster, as she later liked to call it. And people start falling in love with her. But what people didn't see was that she wasn't just learning royal etiquette, she was learning royal warfare. Because soon, the monarchy gets hit by an earthquake. Edward VIII. Edward VIII wasn't just a king with a girlfriend. He was a disaster with a crown. And when he chooses Wallis Simpson, the royal family panics. Because a divorced American woman wasn't just scandalous, she threatened the entire illusion. Edward abdicates. And overnight, Elizabeth's shy husband becomes King George VI. To the public, Elizabeth becomes the supportive queen consort. In private, she's furious. Not because she wanted the crown, supposedly, but because she believed Edward and Wallis had dumped duty onto Bertie, and that it would kill him. And here's where the Queen Mother's reputation starts to split in two. Public Elizabeth, brave, dignified, charming. Private Elizabeth, vindictive, especially towards Wallis. She reportedly refused to treat Wallis as Her Royal Highness, called her that woman, and made sure the royal circle followed her lead. Was Wallis a saint? No, but Elizabeth didn't just dislike her. She tried to erase her from legitimacy. And once Elizabeth decided you were a threat to the institution, she didn't do forgiveness. She did consequences. Then World War II arrives, and suddenly Elizabeth gets the role she was built for. Symbol of defiance. The story you've heard is simple. The king and queen refuse to leave. They stay in London. They show courage. The people adore them. And a lot of that is true. But here's the twist. Even their heroism had class tension underneath. Because when Elizabeth visited bombed neighborhoods, she did it dressed in immaculate outfits, expensive coats, polished hats. She believed it was respect. Some people saw it as tone deaf. And there's that famous quote attributed to her after Buckingham Palace was bombed. "I'm glad we've been bombed. Now I can look the East End in the face." Some interpret it as solidarity. Others hear something colder. Believe that she finally had the right kind of suffering to qualify. And whether every quote is perfectly remembered or not, the effect was real. She became the face of British endurance. And it gave her enormous leverage. Because once you're a national icon, you can get away with things ordinary people can't. And Elizabeth absolutely knew it. After the war, the Queen Mum image hardens. She throws parties, big ones. She becomes this glamorous relic of a vanished empire, and the public eats it up. But behind closed doors, people who worked around her describe a woman who could be snobbish, sharp, and sometimes openly dismissive of people she considered beneath her. There were stories of her mocking accents, judging people's manners, treating lesser staff like furniture. Again, some of this is anecdote passed through decades of palace whisper, but the pattern doesn't go away. And then comes the death that changes everything. King George VI's health collapses. Lung cancer, surgery, decline. When he dies in 1952, the public sees a grieving widow. But in private, Elizabeth allegedly channels grief into something else. Blame. She holds Edward and Wallis responsible, spiritually, emotionally, maybe even morally. Because in her mind, if Bertie hadn't been forced onto the throne, he might have lived longer. So when Edward and Wallis want to attend the funeral, the palace tension is immediate. And Elizabeth's instinct is the one she always had. Control the narrative, control who belongs, control who doesn't. Now her daughter becomes Queen Elizabeth II. And the Queen Mother doesn't fade into the background like a sweet retired aunt. She rebrands. She insists on the title Queen Mother, so the public never forgets she is still royalty, still important, still central. It's a genius move, because even without a crown, she stays untouchable. She becomes the monarchy's comfort blanket, and that comfort blanket becomes power. Over the decades, she's everywhere. Ceremonies, charities, photo ops, celebrations. Always smiling, always steady. But the palace also uses her as a shield. When the monarchy needs warmth, she provides it. When the monarchy needs a tradition, she embodies it. And the more beloved she becomes, the less people want to believe anything ugly about her. That's how you hide sharp edges in plain sight. And then comes the thing that really punctures the humble money myth. Money. In the late 1990s, reports surfaced that the Queen Mother had built up an enormous overdraft, millions of pounds. Not exactly the behavior of a modest old lady living quietly on duty. And her response? Not panic, not apology. She goes to the races like nothing happened. That's not just rich person confidence. That's royal confidence. The belief that rules are for other people and the institution will mop up the mess. Because the Queen Mother was protected by the same thing she helped protect, the monarchy's image. Now, none of this makes her uniquely evil. Plenty of royals have expensive tastes, but it matters because it shows a crack in the fairy tale. If she could be careless with money, if she could be entitled, if she could be insulated from consequences, then what else was insulated? What else never made it into the glossy tribute documentaries? That question matters because one of her darkest controversies isn't about money, it's about who the family hid. In 1987, a story explodes that makes people stare at the royal family differently. Two of Elizabeth's nieces, Catherine and Nerissa Bowes-Lyon, whom many believed were dead, were actually alive, living for decades in an institution. And here's the part that hit people in the gut. They weren't crazy, not in the dramatic palace whisper way. They had significant intellectual disabilities, which meant this wasn't some scandal about madness. It was about shame. The accusation was brutal, that the family hid them away because they didn't fit the image, that they were quietly erased from public knowledge. The palace line leaned on confusion, paperwork errors, distance, misunderstanding. But public trust took damage because the logic was simple. If you can hide family members for decades, what else can you hide? And what does it say about the people at the center of the institution, including the Queen Mother, that this could happen around them? It's not just a sad story. It's a window into what protect the crown can mean when the crown is more important than people. Now enter Princess Diana, and suddenly, the monarchy is dealing with something it can't fully control. A rival symbol. Diana becomes the people's princess. Warm, emotional, touching hands, hugging strangers, breaking the royal rules that made the royals look less human. To the Queen Mother, that kind of spotlight was dangerous because Diana didn't just attract attention, she changed expectations. And if people start expecting the monarchy to behave like Diana, then the monarchy's old power system starts to look outdated, cold, even cruel. So according to multiple accounts, the Queen Mother disliked Diana. Some say she saw her as reckless, immature, embarrassing. Others suggest she resented Diana's popularity. And here's the truth that matters for storytelling. Even if you think Diana was messy, even if you think the press was the real villain, even if you think the royal family was trapped, the Queen Mother represented the old school. The idea that you don't add pain, you don't challenge the institution, you don't become bigger than the crown. Diana did all three. So the Queen Mother wasn't just judging a young woman, she was defending a whole worldview. By the time the Queen Mother reaches extreme old age, she's basically mortal in the public imagination. The smiling survivor, the wartime queen, the royal grandmother, and the darker stories bounce off her like rain off stone. Snobbery, just old-fashioned. Sharp comments, just witty. Political instincts, just duty. Family secrets, just complicated. That's how you keep a legend intact. But the legend has a cost. Because the more you polish someone into a symbol, the less room there is for truth. And the truth about Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon is that she was not a harmless mascot. She was a product of aristocracy who understood power early. A royal who could be charming and cutting in the same breath. A woman who helped stabilize the monarchy and also helped enforce its boundaries. And boundaries are never gentle. They are walls. And sometimes people get left behind those walls. So here's the real takeaway. The Queen Mother wasn't a cartoon villain. She wasn't secretly twirling a mustache in Buckingham Palace. She was something more unsettling. effective. She knew how to win public love. She knew how to punish outsiders. She knew how to keep the monarchy standing when it could have fallen. But the same skills that made her a national comfort also made her capable of coldness, erasure, and cruelty when the institution demanded it. Because that's what a monarchy is at its core, a family business where the brand matters more than the family. And Elizabeth Bowes' line, she understood the brand better than almost anyone, which is exactly why she stayed beloved, and exactly why her darker legacy still makes people uncomfortable to talk about. Because once you admit the Queen Mum wasn't purely sweet, you have to ask a nastier question. How many other royal legends are just well-funded myths? If you want more stories where the legend is the mask and the real damage happens in private, subscribe.